Hello, I am Abigail Dillon, and my collection was American Literature in the Van Pelt-Nope Library of Michigan Technological University. The major demographic of Michigan Technological University, and thus Van Pelt-Nope Library, can be summed up in one word: white. Very white. In fact, over the past 5 years, only 25% of students enrolled are actually of a different ethnicity than non-Hispanic white. Unfortunately, this ratio carries over into the authors of the American Literature collection. For instance, Mark Twain, very prolific author, ends up having 4 shelves to himself, a total of 47 titles within the collections, and 2 of those 47 are actually 25-volume sets. Equally famous and equally influential authors such as Alice Walker, an African-American author, and the Chinese-American author Amy Tam have barely a shelf to themselves, if even that. Amy Tan, for instance, only has 3 titles to her name within the collection. Now, one could argue that it's because perhaps Mark Twain was more prolific than they were. That argument holds some weight, but less so when there are a ton of overlap. At least half of the collection of Mark Twain's works are repeats. My acquisition goals were twofold, the first of which was to introduce new non-white authors into the collection. Another one, the second one, was to expand on current non-white authors such as Toni Morrison, Amy Tan, and Octavia E. Butler, expand on their collections within the library. To add new authors to the collection, I also needed to spend specific goals on it. Otherwise, I would have just gone crazy and collected all the authors that I could find with any ethnicity, any sort of storytelling, and just aiming for diversity. But without, certain goals, I probably would have not been able to narrow down my wide selection of the books I discovered. Qualifications for new authors were twofold, and while they weren't rigid rules, they were guidelines that I tried to stick to pretty well. The first of which was that I specifically wanted more Chinese American and Indian American authors. The second of which was that I wanted non-historical pieces, pieces that did not focus on civil rights movements or racial issues. And I'll explain why for both of those. For Chinese American and Indian American, it was relatively simple. Well, for the American portion, it's American literature. I had to find authors in those areas. For Chinese and Indian, though, I went to the second largest demographic of Michigan Tech, and that is international students. International students make up 15% of the students enrolled at Michigan Tech today. Furthermore, students from India and students from the People of Republic of China are the most widespread of the international students. And so, while I wanted to diversify the collection, I did make specific efforts to appeal to this particular demographic. My second criteria, the idea of finding non-racially charged historical novels, was actually based on the idea that a lot of times that those are the only places that you'll find people of color. White people get to, be off on, grand adventures in, Knights of the Round Table, or off in space, or off saving the world as superheroes. But, the ethnic people, they can keep their stories to where they're historically called for. And that was something I wanted to avoid. I wanted to have stories there that were told about, science fiction, about horror, about comedy, just kind of everyday life, and have it be written by and starring non-white protagonists. And that was probably one of my main goals that I went for, and kind of overrode a lot of choices about the exact ethnicity of the author, other than them not being white. So that was my main goal of the collection, was to diversify the entirety of it. Thanks for listening.